In this video, I want to share my top lessons and takeaways from having dinner with a couple that does $100 million a year in revenue. Let's get it going. What's good, everybody? Welcome back. Greg Hickman here with Alt Agency at altagency.com, and I'm gonna pivot from the normal training that I talk about here and share some lessons because I had a really amazing opportunity to have dinner with Alex Hormozi and Leila Hormozi, the co-CEOs of Gym Launch and now acquisition.com, and they actually have a portfolio of companies that does over $100 million a year. And their quote unquote claim to fame is they took Gym Launch, which is a consulting business helping gyms grow, from 0 to 30 million in like 18 months or something like that. So they've been around the block, they know a lot of stuff, and it was amazing to have someone at that level, $100 million a year in revenue, be interested in having dinner with a small group of entrepreneurs that for all of us, there was 5 or 6 of us that were doing anywhere between 1.5 and $2 million a year. So they were giving back, trying to support up and comers, which I think is amazing and should be actually the first lesson is there's always someone behind you that you can help and show the way and share your experience. And sometimes it's your experiences and stories that will allow them to believe in themselves and also just get to know other like-minded people, and the things that you're probably feeling in this entrepreneurship game are pretty normal. And if you are not yet subscribed to this channel, go ahead and click that subscribe button and that notification bell. So let's dive in. Takeaway number 1 is that if you want to scale, you have to focus on product. And this was by far and away one of the favorite things that I heard, because I consider myself an operations and product focused owner. I love creating training for our clients. I love packaging things up. I love the coaching side of the business, and I'm okay at marketing. And one of the things Alex said was along the lines of, I see a lot of online entrepreneurs that get stuck because they don't obsess over product like they obsess over marketing. You talk to anyone in kind of the high ticket coaching consulting space, we all know our click-through rates, our cost per lead, all of those things, but not many actually focus and know things on the product side, like the metrics around lifetime value of a customer, NPS scores, the number of referrals per client that you get. He listed off tons of metrics that dive deeper in product, and the thing that's going to get you from 1 million to the 3 to 5 to 10 is obsessing over those metrics. And that's obviously what I was surprised to hear, but also in a very refreshing way. All right, takeaway number 2 was to figure out outbound sales. Now, we did talk a tiny bit tactics here, and this might be the most tactical thing, but the thing that I took away from the concept of focusing on outbound was more about the principle. And you see on YouTube, you see scrolling through Facebook or Instagram, you see people running ads to webinars, to VSLs. And in this game of online marketing, coaching, and consulting, I'm like kind of a dancing bear. Like I show up face to face. I'm representing Alt Agency. I'm representing a company. And over time, that actually gets pretty tiring, exhausting. Even though I love creating videos, it creates a dependency that we need to spend money on ads, and we need to have someone kind of showing up on camera to be in these ads that can attract like-minded prospects. And basically Alex talked about how they got started with outbound sales, which is, cold calling, outreach to people that don't know you, but that fit the demographic and criteria of the ideal client. And the big takeaway for me in this conversation was around the fact that he said, if you truly want your business to be scalable and to not be about you, then you have to figure out outbound, because it's the only thing that can scale without you. And it will take a lot of time to get it done right. And he said it took him about 6 to 8 months before it really started working, but he said it was well worth it. And so if you think about content marketing, running paid traffic, while that's usually marketing and advertising is one of the last things that you'll delegate as, an expert-based business, it starts to feel like a trap. Like, oh my God, I'm gonna have to always do this to fill our funnel and to constantly be bringing people in. And he said the great thing about outbound, while hard to get started and slow to start, it's the most worth it because it doesn't require your face, and you can hire other people to do it on your behalf. And if you look at some of the most successful consulting companies and even service-based business, SaaS plus service, like companies like HubSpot, while they spend money on advertising, they actually grow very heavily through outbound sales. The third takeaway actually came from Leila, and she was talking about how to reframe different situations and events and stories that happen to us and for us. And my big takeaway was, sometimes you might feel guilt or envy or jealousy, and I know I do. I see some of my peers that are crushing it, doing, more revenue than me, and my first instinct is like, dang, like I'm not good enough. And then I come back and I say, okay, well, it's actually okay that I feel that. I shouldn't feel guilty that I feel that about someone that I'm also simultaneously cheering on. But what can I learn from this? And what would the Greg 20 years from now do when he sees someone else winning? Well, he would go congratulate them, cheer them on even more, express his gratitude, see if he can support them in any way, and that's what he would do. So that's what I then do. So make sure you're reframing some of these things, and if you are beating yourself up because you maybe feel jealous or have imposter syndrome, just know that it's normal and it's a primal instinct, and you can choose to flip and look at it in a different way that will be positive for you and those around you. Takeaway number 4 was scale is all about being able to lead people correctly. And Leila also talked about this because she's kind of on the operations side and HR and all those things. And she said, if you want to scale a business, it's about getting better at communicating, helping your team and your leaders understand their own beliefs, their own stories that are holding them back, and help them improve on specific skills so that they can take things to the next level in their own careers, obviously then helping your own business. And as a leader, when you're helping build the people around you, oftentimes it's not just reframing and challenging your own beliefs and stories, but you have to do that with your people too. And I've personally started to experience that as our team has grown to 11 people and growing quickly, that what's holding the team back is the beliefs that some team members have about what they are even capable of. So scale is all about the people. All right, takeaway number 5 is all about constraints and sacrifice. And Leila and Alex have kind of gone on record saying that they made a commitment early on to not do anything for 2.5 years, but to get this business to a certain level. They didn't go out at night, they didn't drink alcohol, they were in bed early, they were up early, like they dedicated their entire life to their business. They don't have kids, like they made a lot of decisions, they sacrificed a lot of friendships that many wouldn't do. And it came up in the conversation of, well, would you make that sacrifice again? And they said no, but the real takeaway is that they actually think they would be at least double the size if they chose to have constraints. Because one of the things that they noticed was, well, we can out-sacrifice almost anybody, but when you have to operate within constraints, it actually forces you to be more creative. Alex was very involved in the fulfillment side of the business up until about 8 months before we had this conversation. And he said if he had the constraint of not being the only one to provide core coaching support and not to be as involved, he probably would have hired somebody else and would have been able to remove himself from some of those pieces of the fulfillment way earlier on. And because they just said they were gonna out-sacrifice and they could do it, they actually got really, really far in a lean and mean way. But again, they made that sacrifice. So it just goes to show the power of constraints. I talked about in a video not too long ago about how I start taking Fridays off. And by taking Fridays off, I find that I'm working on more of the right things, saying no to the things that are gonna distract me. And I come to work with more energy, creativity than I ever had before, because I'm trying to hit specific goals with the constraint of I can only do it in 4 days a week of work. All right, takeaway number 6 is to keep learning, and that learning comes in seasons. So as I mentioned in the link in the description below, I'll put a link to Alex's new book, $100 Million Offers. He talked about how writing for him has actually helped him learn faster and more effectively. So that really resonated because that's why I create a lot of these videos. It's not only for you, but also for me to reflect and put together the thoughts that I have that I want to share with you. And that in combination with writing is just a great way to cement the things that you're learning on this journey. So if you're a writer or a podcaster, think about how you can write and you can start creating content to cement your own learning and learn things faster versus just sharing and demonstrating your expertise. And then the other piece of learning that I thought was interesting was that he talked about how he chooses to learn. And he talked about learning in seasons where, he would go invest in coaching, consulting in one season really, really heavy. And then once he learned what he needed to do, he'd go into implementation phase and he wouldn't focus on learning while implementing. He'd learn, implement, and he'd kind of move up the ladder, so to speak, of what he needed to learn, then he'd implement it and so on and so forth. So learning comes in seasons for a lot of people. I know that has kind of shown up in my life in a lot of different ways. Maybe it does for you too. And lastly, number 7 is that we got to make sure we're not solving problems that aren't problems yet. And This hit home for everyone at the table because as entrepreneurs, we find a way to insert ourselves and or assume things are broken when they might not actually be broken yet. And we might just need to let things play out a little bit longer to identify if something is even broken and be able to truly understand what is actually broken. And Leila talked about how when she speaks to entrepreneurs that are between 1 and 3 million trying to get to 10, they're often not patient enough and letting things play out long enough to really isolate what the next real problem is. They make an assumption and they go to start solving that, and oftentimes they end up creating a larger problem from something that wasn't even a problem at all. And so be sure that as you're growing that you're a little bit more patient and letting the things you put into place play out long enough, sometimes 30, 60, 90 plus days, just to see if that thing is actually working. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed my takeaways from dinner with Alex and Leila. Super honored to be able to have this sort of conversation with them and learn from their experiences. You know, while I don't pay them any money, I feel like they are mentors. I get to read their books, which I'll link up below. I get to watch their YouTube channels, which are linked up below. Both of them produce amazing content with the purpose of giving back and helping others just like myself and you grow. So in the comment section below, I'd love to know, of the takeaways that I had, what was your favorite takeaway from the dinner that I had with Alex and Leila? And in the meantime, go check out this video where I talk about taking Fridays off, because that's one of the constraints that I had put in place for myself that allowed us to double our business last year. See you next time.